Today we're speaking about rethinking transference, but we're speaking specifically around person-centered therapy. Now, I'm going to be honest here, Rory. I know that when I was training, my main modality was person-centered therapy, and I was very fortunate in that transference was covered in my training course. But it's not common to cover person-centered therapy and transference together, because there are those that might suggest that they don't go together. And what might you say to those people, Rory?
Fiddlesticks is what I would say to that, Ken. The reason I brought this topic was I've talked to one or two student therapists over the last 6 months, and they've all said that transference was a brand new idea that came to them in supervision as opposed to in training. And I supervised at least one student supervisee who said that her tutor poo-pooed the idea of transference, that we don't talk about it, it's not person-centered. And I want to take you back to the pivotal moment where Rogers pivoted from being a psychoanalyst to developing what would become person-centered therapy. And it was when he was working in the children's home in New York. And the story goes that he was speaking to a mother about her son who was having really bad behavioural difficulties. And he said to her, the reason he's having behavioural difficulties is because of your early rejection of him. So he'd analysed the situation. He'd used expertise to analyse. And the mother wasn't having any of it. She left rather angrily. And then she returned saying to Rogers, do you take on adults for therapy? To which he said, yes. And that's how the story of person-centered therapy goes. Now, here's the thing, Ken. Didn't mean Rogers was wrong when he did the analysis. It may very well be that the child was acting out because the mother rejected him. But what he didn't do was focus on the transference. What he focused on was what the here and now experiencing of the mother was. And Rogers definitely, absolutely definitely spoke about transference. In fact, I've got a quote here, and it says, clients frequently react to me, not as I am, but as someone else in their past. These responses are not something I interpret. That's the key. I don't interpret them, but something I accept, understand, and respond as part of their experiencing. And effectively, he reframed them. He used unconditional positive regard, congruence, a non-judgmental approach to be able to put himself in a position in the therapy room where the client could talk about what was going on.
So it does fit in if you are a person-centered therapist, this theory. Transference, when someone responds to you based on past relationships rather than who you are right now in the here and now. And I think your example of from Carl Rogers is just perfect. Sometimes clients reply to me as if I was someone else. It's exactly that. And I guess what we're talking about here is not necessarily analyzing this topic and having a deep understanding of transference and countertransference, dare I say, by the end of this chat. It's more about noticing this within yourself and being able to identify and work with what might come up with you during your counselling training.
Well, I think it keys in because it's a key part, it's a cornerstone of the therapeutic alliance, the therapeutic relationship. As a student, how many people have I supervised who've said, I'm really frightened of this client? And they've said, okay, have they said anything or done anything? No, I was frightened of them. Through the supervision, it's come up that, sure enough, the client reminds the therapist of someone from their past. One I can remember very clearly was that the therapist was so frightened of the client, even though they'd done absolutely nothing at all, that they were literally scared of seeing them again. And it turns out the client was wearing a scent that the student's abuser had worn, and it triggered a trauma reaction. So it's really important, not only for client safety, but therapist safety, that we understand that these processes enact. And the thing with transference is it's largely subconscious, Ken. It's largely out of our awareness. So we don't actually think what's going on. We feel it. And at a distance, then when you're in supervision and someone says, so tell us what's going on. I felt this and I felt that. And then you start to unpack it. And I think through your own therapy and through the training and understanding it, it becomes more visible. So it's still a subconscious process. It may start as, for the client, a very uneasy feeling, but we can see what's going on in the tone of the interaction or the nonverbal communication, and I'll be able to speak about it. And a classic one is, I work with a lot of female clients who'd been subject to sexual assault by males. And as they were telling me how they were feeling, it became quite clear that there was not only a reticence, but also the trauma was starting to resurface. And I used to just say, how does it feel talking about this to a man, to another man, to me? And that conversation was, in some cases, all the men I've ever met have just been horrible to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was then that we talked about rupture and repair. That's where the transference is reworked, that it becomes a realization that this is the past, presenting past, not the here and now. And I think that's important.
You're 100% Rory. It's invisible transference, countertransference. We don't see them. We feel them. And it might be that we feel that we're being overly responsible, overly helpful, hesitant, defensive. These can be indicators that we can explore, and they could be seen as early hints at countertransference.
If you're not being taught transference, I'd respectfully ask the tutor if they're going to cover it, because it's a real thing. And I think it's a missing part. If it's not taught, then it's a cornerstone of the work that's missing. It's like trying to build a building without a foundation, in my humble opinion.
100%, Rory. That's exactly what this is. It's a personal development opportunity. The only place it's going to be worked on is in your own personal development. So just some thinking points. Transference is already happening, even if you're just practicing with classmates or involving yourself in group work. Here's what you can do. Notice the pulls, the urge to rescue, the urge to impress, withdraw, perform. Notice those feelings coming up in yourself and note them. You're not doing anything wrong. You're learning about yourself, and you're learning how relationships can shape a session. And it's less about analyzing for now and more about developing your awareness and your steadiness and your understanding of self.